Mr. Holloway, can I just say at the very outset, the cat's welfare is linked to a private member's, the presentation bill, which I put forward in the House in July 2018, following speaking to a fantastic local charity in my constituency, Animals Lost and Found. And I have to say this, Mr. Holloway, and being as frank as I am, I was not aware of their great work until we were looking at the National Volunteers Charity Day. And my wonderful staff, Finlay, who sits behind me, goes, these are the list of charities in the constituency. Which one would you like to go and visit? So it's what Animals Lost and Found in Grange Road, Gillingham. Let's go and see the great work they do. And meeting Natasha and Dee was inspiration. There's two individuals who do not have a lot of money, but they have an amazing heart in wanting to do the right thing, in ensuring that animals which have been abandoned, lost, or injured get the support they need. And I went to the back of their house and I saw a number of cats who have been either neglected, injured, or abandoned. And I said to them, look, what can I do to help you? They said, well, look, legislation needs to be looked at. There's 11.1 million cats in our country. 11.1 million cats. They're part of our family. They're part of our everyday family. They bring immense happiness to each and every one of us. Of course I give way.
I'm most grateful to him for giving way, and I'm delighted that he secured this debate. Is he aware that in 2016, 202 cats were reported in the press as having been shot in the United Kingdom? And of that number, 90% were shot in either England or Wales, where we have more lax laws on air rifles. Does he agree with me that we should look at tightening up the law on possession and ownership of air guns?
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for that important information from 2016. Was I aware of that? Can I say to him, I was made aware of the specific point about firearms, ban on electric training aids, and control of air guns by PDSA, the wonderful charity that do a great work in this area. But I wasn't aware of the specific point, and I'm grateful for him on that, because it is absolutely right where you see this kind of completely unacceptable behaviour taking place, that everything that can be done to prevent it by the regulation of these firearms is done to ensure that the welfare of animals is protected at every level. Now, I'm grateful for him for raising that very point. And the point I was saying, Mr. Holloway, is the amazing joy that these wonderful animals bring to our lives also means that we, individuals, have responsibility to do everything we possibly can to ensure that their welfare is protected. Yes, I give way.
I thank the honourable member. I just wanted to take this opportunity, as he's making a powerful speech, to congratulate Stapley Grange Cattery in my constituency. They do an amazing job at looking after and rehoming cats. And I'd like to also just take this moment to pay tribute to my own cat, Pudding, who is a remarkable addition to our family.
Well, I also pay tribute to her for what she does and her charity, and also congratulate her on the new member of her family, because I'm sure that cat will be treated like a member of her family, like they're done throughout the country. But what I would say, Mr. Holloway, is this. For today's debate, there are a number of points. There are a number of areas which I could look at on cat welfare. And you could look at the public education campaign. You could look at cat breeding legislation. The point that was raised earlier about the control and regulation of air guns, fireworks, to ensure... Yes, I give way.
I'm incredibly grateful for the honourable gentleman giving way, and I'd like to thank him and congratulate him on securing this debate. As a cat lover myself, I'm very lucky that Trixie the cat came to me as a stray, and growing up we had Tippy the cat, who came from the Cat Protection League. And does he agree with me that Cat Protection League 2022 agenda encapsulates a lot of the issues that he's talked around, everything from microchipping to reducing violence against cats, and it's really important that we get behind that campaign.
Well, I'm so glad that I gave way, because she talks about cat protection, and cat protection is somebody who I met. and they have written to members of Parliament, they've written to me, and I think they do an amazing work, and I was delighted to attend their Christmas parliamentary reception along with other colleagues here, and of course, the charity that she talks about does great work, and it's important that we work with them to ensure we get the right kind of framework with that being the case. Mr. Holloway, the point I was making earlier is that there are a number of areas that we could look at, but today I want to focus on two areas, and that is compulsory microchipping of all cats and also reporting after an accident. And of course, I give way to my good friend, the Honourable Member for Strangford.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holloway, first of all, congratulate the Honourable Gentleman for bringing this forward. Whenever I got married some 32 years ago, and my wife loved cats, and perhaps I didn't, but as I continued to love my wife, I continued to love her cats as well. So that's how life is, But just to say, she's also a volunteer and worker for a CC, the animal charity, which do some excellent work for cats and dogs. So does the Honourable Member not agree that charities such as the CC do a phenomenal job in caring for stray cats and providing sterilisation and other deterrents, which the Honourable Gentleman was referring to, for stray cats, and that no matter how good they are at their job, we must equally, in this House, do ours and do it to an equally high standard, and thus far, unfortunately, I believe we're not achieving that.
I completely agree with what my honourable friend is saying. There has been brilliant work by the Secretary of State for DEFRA, but there is immense more that we have to do. And I agree with him on the first point. Like him having an amazing wife who got him to be an animal lover and a cat lover. I'm not married yet, Mr. Holloway, but if I do, I need somebody who likes cats so that we can get a cat. Because coming in and out of London, you're going to get time to have a cat. And you want to talk about animal welfare, you've got to give it the time. So I agree with him on that too. So that's a key criteria. But the point he made about supporting and doing the right thing, and as parliamentarians, not simply talking about something, but pushing for the right framework to be put in place, I think is absolutely right. Moving on to the substantive... yes, of course I give way. Yes, of course I give way.
I thank him for giving way. Would he acknowledge that the role that cats play in the social fabric of our society, and that not just, but it is particularly for individuals who may be elderly or vulnerable, they play a vital role in providing that level of comfort and companionship that they are looking for.
And I think the honourable member is absolutely right on that, and I think he would have seen the PDSA report, which talks about the 5 points. And the 5 points, one of them is companionship. And I think he's absolutely right. When we talk about the issue about loneliness and the government doing the right thing and people having, the required environment to be happy, what cats and animals do is absolutely amazing. And I think the point he's made is very valid. And as we are talking about, Mr. Holloway, the first point about microchipping of compulsory microchipping of cats. Prior to coming to this debate, I spoke with the Secretary of State for DEFRA, and my right honourable friend in October, the 25th, said to me, the proposals that I was pushing for, I was calling for in my private member's bill, presentation bill, about compulsory microchipping of cats and also to ensure that there's reporting of an accident like there is for dogs. He said to me, what I was calling for was very reasonable, and will ask his civil servants to look into that matter. And I take the Secretary of State for his word. If he says it's very reasonable, then therefore that means to do the opposite will be very unreasonable. So therefore I say to the Minister today, in light of the commitment and the words of the Secretary of State to say that this is very reasonable, then I would say this: are cats less important to dogs? Because if we have legislation, and the legislation that went through, which required dogs to be compulsory microchipped, was put forward in a regulation in 2015, and then you had a statutory instrument. So that does not need to be primary legislation. It can be done through a regulation and through a statutory instrument. And at the time, I say to the Minister, at the time it was said, we will do it with dogs first to see how the process works. And then we will look at extending this further. Well, that was in 2015. And I know the government and Parliament works slowly, but 3 years to see how the system works, this thing is long enough. And what I would say to the Minister, and I know the Minister, having been here at the same time as I for 8 years, he's a wonderful man who cares passionately about animal welfare and doing the right thing. And he listens to what people have to say. And therefore, change.org is a petition that was put forward, helped to change the law for cats involved in RTAs. And that petition had 377,000 signatures on that. Petition to microchip, a Parliament petition, which members of the public can go on, about microchipping, had 33,413 signatures in one. Petition to introduce compulsory scanning for microchip for VATs, rescues and authorities. That had 70,800 signatures. And what that demonstrates is that people out there, they want us to do the right thing. And when the Honourable Member for Strangford says, Parliament, we have a duty to do the right thing. If ministers need to see the public interest in this area, well, they've got that through the petitions that have been put forward, through the contribution of the members of this House that have contributed so far and in previous debates.
Honourable friend give way?
Yes, of course I give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's mentioned the issue of microchips, but it's also true that the Road Traffic Act could be amended also, because under Section 170, motorists are currently required to stop and report accidents involving animals such as horses, cattle, mules, sheep, pigs, goats and dogs, but not cats. Does he not agree it's time to amend that legislation as well?
Well, the Honourable Member for Lewes knows a lot about this because she is the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on cats and who has done amazing work on this issue. And she is absolutely right. And I think the legislation that it is under the RTA says the reason you can't have cats in that category because they're free roaming. And I would say to everyone out there, let's get away from technicality. Let's do the right thing. And let's look at counterparts around the world on this very point. And I'm grateful to Mandy at Cats Matter. And she gave me a piece of legislation, and it's here. It's Article 26, the State of New York Department of Agriculture and Markets. Rather than having to go around the RTA, we could have a specific section under animal welfare. And in that section, they talk about, this is what they say, under Section 01, leaving a scene of injury to certain animals without reporting. Any person operating motor vehicle which shall strike and injure any horse, dog, cat or animal classified as cattle shall stop and endeavour to locate the owner and the custodian of such animal. So, if the issue of free roaming is why we can't amend the legislation here, RTA, then cats are free roaming in the United States too. But they've addressed the issue by having legislation on animal welfare separately and to address that very point. And I think that the point which I was going to come to later, but I'll come to it now, that the Honourable Member for Lewes makes is absolutely at the heart of this. If an individual knowingly, and this is knowingly, goes along and at night hits a cat, is there a moral obligation? Many people would already do so. But if it is the point I say to the Minister now, which I made earlier, are cats less important to dogs? You've got the legislation. We argue over technicality, and I've read Hansard about previously when it's debated in the other place. Well, it's free roaming, and we would define free roaming this way. We'll avoid the RTA, and let's go with an animal welfare legislation and do it because it's the right thing to do. So if you knowingly strike a cat, then on that basis you should do the same thing you would do if you strike a dog, is that you would go out there trying to find the owner. If you can't find the owner, you report it. And the point does come. And the point is this, and that was made to me when I asked people to clarify it. They said, should one then report it to the police? That might make it onerous on the police, on resources. So well, you do it for dogs, but if you don't have to report it to the police, you could report it to the vet. You could report it to the local authority. You could do a number of different things. So technicality can be avoided, but it's about doing the right thing with that in the first place. So I completely agree with her. That was the second part of my debate, but I'm grateful that it's now become the first part. So this will now become the second part. Can I just quote Mr. Hollowbone from the wonderful charity Animals Lost and Found in Kent about the issue of compulsory microchipping. This is, our main job at Animals Lost and Found in Kent is to reunite animals. Our job is extremely hard, as 5 cats out of 10 are chipped. The other 5 can't get home and end up going through the rescue centres. That isn't fair or the best way for the cat's welfare, as the cat gets confused, upset, stressed and can shut down. Stress in cats can be very dangerous for them and can lead to big problems like a blocked bladder, urinary tract infections, urine crystals, which can lead to death if not treated. Stress also brings out more sinister problems in cats like those like flu. But if the cat was chipped, we could get that cat home where they belong. That, Mr. Hollowbone, was from the points given to me by Animals Lost and Found in Kent. My colleague on the right earlier talked about cats protection, and I'm grateful to the comments and the notes given to me by Cats Protection on this matter. And this is what they say, from a cats protection point. In England, a survey conducted for cats protection showed 27% of owned cats are not microchipped. Compulsory microchipping of dog is already in force in the whole of the United Kingdom. In the last 12 months, 62% of the cats taken in by Cats Protection UK adoption centres were not microchipped. And unlike collars, microchips don't come off or put cats at risk of collar-related injuries. And they go on to say, but having cats which are microchipped, and I say this to the Minister, it's not difficult to introduce this legislation. It can be done. And why is it so important? Cats Protection say this: failure to microchip a cat can result in the following problems. Difficulty reuniting a cat that goes missing with its owner. Cats are needlessly rehomed because they are believed to be strays. Worry about a pet cat in the event of an accident. Vets are unable to contact cat owners in any case of emergency. Ownership. Ownership disputes are difficult to resolve. Detection of cat theft may be difficult. Are these not good enough reasons to say we have to act swiftly? So what I would say to the Minister, if I may, on this, is that along with the representations that I've had from Cats Matter, Cats Protection, PDCA, and Blue Cross Animals Hospital, which I will refer to now, if I were to send the Minister those representations, if the Minister would be kind enough to respond to all the points that they make. But along with that, if the Minister would be kind enough to meet with me and all those charities that I've mentioned who have been supporting and putting this through, along with the wonderful member for Lewes, who is the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Cats. Looking at the time, Mr. Hollowbone, I just want to mention two other points. Blue Cross Animals Hospital, they do an amazing work, and I was grateful for them for allowing me to visit their centre and see their great work. On the issue of microchipping, they say in 2017, 24% of cats admitted to Blue Cross were considered to be stray. It is, however, not uncommon for owned animals to be presented as strays because they are not microchipped or do not have updated details on their chip. And I agree. People say there's no point in microchipping if you don't ensure that the details are correct. That's got to be addressed. And the second point, where will the costs come from? Charities like Blue Cross already do it voluntarily, and the cost is not significant. It can be done. So if the issue of cost it is, I would say to the Minister, it is not that expensive. It can be done. Ways and avenues can be made because it is the right thing to do. And they say out of the total 5,057 cats admitted for rehoming to Blue Cross in 2017, a staggering 80% were not microchipped. So therefore, if the legislation were to be amended and there were compulsory microchipping rules brought into play, that would address a number of these points. The second point I was going to come to, but the Honourable Member for Lewes has already brought it to the fore, is the issue of reporting after an accident. And I would say to the Minister this: if jurisdiction in the United States allows for, and addresses the issue of free roaming by covering it under the animal welfare provisions, then I think we should move away simply from amending the RTA, and that's why the presentation bill I puts forward the Cats Bill. It doesn't specifically talk about the RTA, because you can address it the other way around. So, in essence, Mr. Hollowbone, what I say to the Minister, this is the right thing to do. It ties into what the government is already trying to do, and it does a brilliant job on the animal welfare. But there is a lot more that needs to be done. And I would say, having seen the joy that cats bring, in In October, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, with my good friend for my 40th, French Hill. He's the congressman down there. And he had a cat called JJ and Teddy. I wasn't there for that long, but the short time I was there, after a day out, you come back, you become attached to them. They're amazing creatures. They bring a lot of happiness. And I think if they bring us happiness, we have a moral obligation to support them, to make sure they get the right support. So, Minister, I ask you from the bottom of my heart, to you being a good man, can we please make sure that not just say today, we will look to address this at some point in the future, short-term, medium-term, long-term. What is a timescale now to getting this through on the statute book and put into practice?
The question is, this House has considered cat welfare. The debate can last until 4:30. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Hollowbone. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Gillingham and Rainham, for securing this debate. I do need to correct him on one thing. Having been raised in a particular county town of East Sussex, in Lewes, it's not Lewes, it's Lewis. Otherwise, a certain member here will be quite angry about that. But we've set that straight. I think the other thing is I'm very keen to confirm to him and to members that have turned up for this debate, and pleased to see so many, that of course I would be more than willing to meet with him and the various welfare groups he's talked about to respond to their concerns in writing, to meet to see how we can best move this further forward. And there are other things that I want to do as well on the back of his very well argued speech. It may not satisfy all his demands, but we'll move forward on this particular agenda. And of course, the honourable member for Lewis will be more than welcome at that meeting as well. I do also think it's time that he buys his own cat, actually. He's made such a compelling case. He's shown how it can help people in their political affairs and also find that ideal partner. You never know. It might be the right thing he could do in his own life. Yeah. And it's great to see so many members have such deep personal experience with cats and their involvement with welfare charities as well, because cats are cherished members for many people in their families, and they bring great joy in homes up and down the country. And we need to recognise that. And we need to also understand, as my honourable friend pointed out in his excellent speech, the distress and concern it causes when a cat might get lost. And people want to find out where they might be. So I'd just like to join honourable members for the comments they've made praising various groups, whether it's the honourable member for Crewe, no longer in her place, Stapley Grange, or the honourable member for Barnsley East, who praised the excellent work of cats protection, or the honourable member for Strangford, who talks about his wife's committed work to animal welfare in various debates, and I'm pleased it also extends to cats. But of course, there are...
For giving way. In Suffolk, we've had a very dedicated individual in Kathleen Lusted, who is now approaching 100, who's given almost her whole life towards looking after and protecting cats that have gone missing, providing them with new homes and providing them with protection. And she has almost single-handedly set up a Cats Protection League branch in Framlingham and Saxmundham. And I wonder if he'd join me in thanking and congratulating her on her life's work in protecting and looking after cats in East Suffolk.
Of course, I'd like to join in congratulating her on her work and thanking her for her work. If he could provide details, not will I only put it on the record and thank her for the work she's doing in Framlingham, but we'll also write to her as well, given that it's been a life's work, and appreciate the contribution he's made to put that before us as well. Because there are so many good causes, good welfare groups that take this cause further forward, whether it's Cats Protection, RSPCA, Battersea Dogs and Cats Own Blue Cross. They are absolutely committed to the welfare of cats and various other animals as well, and through their dedicated volunteers, make sure, in many cases, that cats that have been lost can be reunited, and also rehome cats as well. Before I get on to the substantive point of the debate, the honourable member for East Yorkshire, my honourable friend, raised an important point about air weapons. I know his interest in these matters, and I do recognise, along with many others, a widespread concern about the shooting of cats with air weapons. And anyone who does this is liable to prosecution for causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. The maximum sentence is currently 6 months in prison, but that could be extended with new legislation we're looking to put to the House in due course. There is a review of air weapons regulation that took place in October 2017, which was announced then, And we're now considering what needs to be happening with the licensing system, and we'll announce the outcome of that shortly. So that will help address some of his concerns. I give way.
I'm most grateful to the Minister for that response. Will he, during this period when he's reflecting on the matter, look at what's happened in Northern Ireland, where they do have a system of licensing for air guns and where the number of cats reported in the press being shot has dropped?
I must confess I was not aware of that. I'm grateful again for him raising that issue with me as to what goes on in Northern Ireland. I'm sure the Honourable Member for Strangford's aware of that too. I will follow up with officials and see what we can learn from it. On that point, and then I better move on to microchipping, otherwise I'll be held to account.
Last year, the RSPCA reported that they reached a 5-year high in the level of airgun attacks on pets, and the vast majority of pets attacked were cats. Will the review that he is currently engaged in also be looking at where airguns can be advertised and sold? We've had an incident in Norbury recently where a pawnbroker's shop turned itself into an airgun centre and had a big display of what looked like semi-automatic rifles that were airguns in the shop window on a high street right here in South London.
I thank the Honourable Member for bringing that to our attention. I'm not the Minister responsible for this, and so I don't want to tread beyond where I should. However, I have seen similar incidents in my constituency, heard of similar reports, and I'll follow up on the very important point he makes and get back to him as to how widely the review will go. But I hope it will address these issues, and I'll confirm that with him in due course. In terms of microchipping, the Honourable Member for Gillingham and Rainham, my honourable friend, has talked about his private member's bill, which takes forward a very serious issue. He also highlighted how this matter has been raised in numerous petitions, and just the sheer number of people who have signed these petitions highlights the fact that he's not alone. And the members in this room are not alone. There are many people who are very concerned about this particular issue. The government recommends any owner should microchip their cat to increase the chance of being reunited with its owner if it gets lost. In April of this year, we updated the statutory cat welfare code with the welcome collaboration of Cats Protection and others. The code now emphasises the benefits of microchipping cats more strongly. Microchipping technology has vastly improved the chances that lost pets will be reunited with their owners. For a relatively small one-off cost of around £25, people can have a greater confidence that their beloved cat can be identified. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And as the head of cattery at Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, Lindsay Quinlan, has said, whilst the microchipping procedure is short and simple, the return on their value is immeasurable. So it's good to see that the proportion of cats that are microchipped has grown in recent years. My honourable friend highlighted the report by the PDSA, a good report, showing that 68% of cats are microchipped. However, a recent survey of Cats Protection found that the majority of cats taken to their adoption centres in the past 12 months were not microchipped. It's heartbreaking to think that some of these cats may not have been reunited with their family simply due to the lack of a microchip. That's why I strongly endorse Cats Protection's campaign to promote cat microchipping. The government will work with Cats Protection and other animal welfare charities so that the proportion of cats that are microchipped continues to grow. In England, compulsory microchipping has been introduced through secondary legislation due to public safety risks posed by stray dogs for dogs. This does not mean that cat welfare is any less important than dog welfare. There is just not the same risk associated with cats from a safety perspective. For this reason, the microchipping of cats is not compulsory, but as I say, we do strongly encourage owners and breeders to do it. That is why the government's Cat Welfare Code promotes microchipping on two grounds. First, as I've already mentioned, microchipping gives cats the best chance of being identified when lost. And secondly, and just as importantly, a lost cat that has a microchip is more likely to receive prompt veterinary treatment when needed. In this way, microchipping helps protect more cats from pain, suffering, injury and disease as required by the Animal Welfare Act. I'm grateful to Cats Protection for their support in developing the Cat Welfare Code, and DEFRA officials remain very engaged with this issue, and I'll commit to meet with Cats Protection in January, whether it's part of the round table or separately, to take forward this important agenda. But I think it's also important, with the limited time left, just to highlight some other action that I'd like to take in response to this very important debate. because, as has been said here in this debate, under the Road Traffic Act of 1988, there's a requirement for drivers to stop and report accidents involving certain working animals, including cattle, horses and dogs. This does not currently extend to cats. However, the Highway Code does advise drivers to report accidents involving any animal to the police. This should lead to many owners being notified when their cats are killed on roads. I'm pleased that it is established good practice for local authorities to scan any dog or cat found on the streets so that the owner can be informed. Following today's debate, I will meet with my honourable friend, the Minister for Local Government, to discuss how we can work together to further promote best practice in this area. Highways England has clear guidelines for contractors to follow when they find a deceased dog. This process is designed with owners in mind, giving them the best chance of being informed of the incident that has occurred. The process laid out in the Network Management Manual currently only applies to dogs. I would like to see what could be done to extend this to cats, and I hope other members would agree with this. This area is the responsibility of the Department for Transport, and following today's debate, I'll work with my honourable friend, the Minister of State for Transport, to explore what the government could do in this area. So just to conclude, Mr Hollowbone, I would like to just say how important it's been to have this debate today. It's brought this issue certainly very much to my attention as a relatively new Minister for Animal Welfare. I'm extremely grateful for that, and I would like to highlight just how important animal welfare is to this government and to DEFRA. I'll give way.
General point about looking to what can be done further, but on the point of compulsory microchipping for cats and amending not the RTA, but putting that post-accident in animal welfare like in the United States, will you go away and ensure that we can look at compulsory microchipping as well as the animal welfare perspective post-accident?
I thank the honourable member or my honourable friend for his comment. Of course, I'll go away and look at these points. He's made a compelling case, and I and the government feel some sympathy with what he says. There are practical differences between dogs and cats in terms of public safety. Notwithstanding that, there is more that we want to do to promote this, and gladly I'll meet with him and we'll take forward the actions of the meetings I've talked about already. Thank you.
The question is, this House has considered cat welfare. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order.